Hi there, I'm Dr. Gary Mendoza, and in this brief video I just wanted to consider habit and working with your clients to help them change habits. When we talk about lifestyle change, we are generally talking about needing to change a habit. Now, we form habits more out of convenience, really, to save our brain processing effort. So things that we do every day, the brain picks up on this and then stores them as a routine. If you think of software programming, then this routine runs every time there's a trigger for it. In other words, every time we flick the switch, we naturally run this routine. So if you just think, as an example, making a cup of tea, if we get thirsty, we think, oh, I fancy a cup of tea. We then go into the habit, and the habit will be fill the kettle, turn the kettle on, wait for the kettle to boil, put the mug or the cup there, put your milk in or don't put your milk in, depending on whether you believe it should be in before you make the tea or after, whichever way round it is. Add the tea bag, put sugar in if you want, add water to the right point, stir it. All of those things are habitual. You're not thinking about it. Just if you think of something just like picking up the spoon to stir the tea, you don't consciously think about that. You don't think, oh, I've got to move my hand over there, grab the spoon with the right pressure, I've got to maneuver the spoon into the cup, I've now got to do the stirring action. You don't think of any of that. It's all habitual. And if you did have to consciously think about all the actions that you go through to make a cup of tea, then your brain will be frazzled. You can't do it. And so the brain just stores that routine and then uses it every time there's a trigger. Now, this is the key thing when we come to making healthy eating choices, or what we do when we get certain triggers. So if we feel hungry, we might turn to chocolate. So the trigger is hunger, and the response to that is eat chocolate. So when you're trying to change these lifestyle type habits, whether this be nutritional, whether this be activity, whatever, you have to first off identify what the trigger is, or the cue. So in this case, we're talking about hunger and we were talking about chocolate. So the trigger or the cue is feel hungry. But equally, the trigger or the cue could be I'm bored. What will I do? And that will be a trigger to the next part. So the next part, once the trigger's been flicked, if you like, flick the switch, we now move into the routine and we run that routine, whatever it might be. Now, the key part of this habit is then the reward. So you have cue or trigger, the habit itself or the routine, and then a reward. There always needs to be a reward at the end. Now, the reward might be no longer feel hungry. The reward might be the rush you get from the sugar. So you kind of have to figure out what the reward is. Once you've established what that habit is, and there will be hundreds of them, if not thousands, your next thing is you've now got to think about what you're going to replace this with. So now the trigger or the cue will always be there. So the hunger, the boredom, whatever it might be. What you have to establish now for your client is what the new routine is going to be when that trigger arrives. So the boredom thing might be read a chapter of a book, or go for a walk around the block, or whatever. It can be any routine you want to put in there that the client thinks, yeah, I can do that instead of. So when I know I'm bored, be aware of it, and now I'm going to have this routine. Now at the end of that routine, you need some type of reward. Now it could be tangible, so it could be if you do a walk around the block, you're going to make yourself a latte or a cappuccino, whatever. It could also be just a mental reward, and that will be I've done something that's going to help me achieve my goals, and I feel so much better for doing that. Now, this then relies on the fact that the goals need to be kind of very well set. They need to be emotionally anchored, and I'll cover that in another video. But good goals are actually quite good because then they provide, as I say, this kind of mental reward as opposed to something tangible that you're going to do. So you might reward yourself with, I will now watch my favourite programme because I've done my walk around the block. But you can see where I'm coming from. You need to find the cue or the trigger. You need to swap out the routine, and you do need a reward at the end. The other thing to bear in mind about habits is when you're working with clients to try and change these, you cannot get rid of bad habits. They always exist. So you will always have that program stored in your brain, and there is always a danger that you will go back to using the original program. So the best you can do is overwrite or rewrite a habit in itself. And this can take a long time, 200, 300 days, to establish this as the new habit. And so for that first kind of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you may have to or the client may have to consciously think, all right, that's the cue, that's the trigger. What I mustn't do is this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do my new habit. So it has to be a very conscious thing. And sometimes keeping an activity diary or a food diary is quite helpful for this, because then they can record on their diary, had the cue, which was all felt hungry, decided to use the new kind of food choice, whatever it was, felt better for it. So you're conscious, what you're basically trying to do is you're trying to move this from the like cache memory, if you like, which is the temporary memory, into the permanent memory in your brain. So it's complex, it's not easy, and as the trainer you're going to have to help your client consciously establish the new habits, whether that be nutritional, whether that be activity, exercise. So just remember, find the cue or the trigger, replace the routine with the new kind of healthier version, if you want to think of it that way, and ensure that there's a reward in place that helps kind of complete the loop, if you like. So you have cue, routine, reward. Hopefully you found that useful and can work on it. Good luck with your future progress with your clients. Bye for now.